Thanos, the Avengers, The Office, the Black Death, population growth, genocide, demographic transition model, current trends in the world. Woo! Get ready, YouTube. Today on the Mr. Sinn channel, we're covering it all. So I finally got around to watching Avengers Infinity War, and boy, did I have some interesting thoughts. And it led me down this rabbit hole of research, all about Thanos and his idea to eliminate half of the world and actually universe's population. Now, before I get too much into this video, I have to say a couple things up front. One, if you haven't watched my videos on the demographic transition model, on population growth, on density, on trends, all of those, make sure you check these out. This video is going to go into everything we've learned in our population unit so far. And it's going to be really important that you understand all of these themes already. Also, while watching the video, make sure you use the guided notes. I'm going to be going into a ton of different things in here. We're going to be talking about the Black Death, we're going to be looking at genocide and Thanos and Malthus and Neo-Malthusians, and it's going to get complicated quick. So use the guided notes, go along with the video so that way you can understand exactly what's going on. Because in this video, I'm going to be trying to see, is Thanos actually the good guy? And if you haven't watched Avengers yet, don't worry. You don't have to have seen the movie to understand what's going on. In fact, I'm going to actually explain right now the main plot. So in case you haven't seen it and you don't want spoilers, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! They are coming! So if you don't want to, get the movie spoiled, I'd pause this video, go watch Avengers, come back, and then see what's going on. Now, what we have to understand with the Avengers is this. In the movie, Thanos is the Mad Titan. Now, he's mad for a variety of reasons, but the main reason is because he wants to eliminate half of the world's and universe's population. Thanos believes there is a finite amount of resources in the universe, and that with population growth continuing to expand and grow and more people being born, eventually there'll be too many people, and then humanity itself will fail to survive because we'll have some catastrophe and the whole place will be destroyed. In the movie, Thanos, that's what happened to his home planet. Now, Thanos throughout Avengers is getting this Infinity Gauntlet, and that lets him, for all simplicity's sake, be able to do essentially whatever he wants. So with the snap of his fingers, he can eliminate half of the world's population, which would then protect him and also his whole ideology. Now, the question that I came to is he right? I mean, this seems like a crazy idea, but is it? And when actually studying AP Human Geography and also environmental biology and a bunch of different things, you'll start to realize, hey, maybe he's onto something. There's actually a lot of people around today that have a similar idea of Thanos. Not necessarily killing everyone, but this concept of finite resources and an ever-growing population. So before we break it down, let's just hear a little bit what Thanos has to say about his idea.
Little one, it's a simple calculus. This universe is finite, its resource is finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correction.
You don't know that!
I'm the only one who knows that. At least I'm the only one with the will to act on it.
So as we can see, Thanos doesn't really view himself as the villain. Thanos views himself as the hero. In fact, Thanos is essentially saying in that clip, hey, I'm the one who understands what's going on. These other people over here, they don't even understand. They're looking too much in the near future. They're too short-sighted. They're not focusing on what's best overall, for the good of everyone, for the good of every species and person. Now, it's an interesting idea. Is Thanos actually the hero in this movie? Are the Avengers the villains? Now, the one thing we do have to get out of the way is, yes, Thanos is a Mad Titan. If you watched the movie and if you read the comments, you know that Infinity Stones, all the ones he's been collecting in that gauntlet, the Infinity Gauntlet, that's what he wears during the movie, and that's what gives him the power to snap his fingers and kill off half of the population. Well, he can do anything with that. So why didn't he just make everything double? Or in fact, just make all resources unlimited and infinite. That way everyone would be happy all the time. He never thought of that. Or for our sake, we'll just pretend that he couldn't do that. So sorry, Thanos, you actually could have saved everyone without having to kill anyone, but you know what? You chose that route. So now let's go and explore this idea of overpopulation, limited resources, and do we need some overall control? Is Thanos the hero in this movie? Now, Thanos' ideology is based off the exponential growth model. You can see it on the screen right now. He believes that over time, our population rate will continue to double and triple and quadruple. As people have kids, then their kids have kids, then their kids have more kids, we start to see big population booms. Now, over time, one of the things that Thanos notes is that resources are finite. It's not like the Earth or whatever planet we're talking about can continuously produce resources. Now, certain resources do replenish, but under this model, you can see our rate is exponential. We are continuously going up, and it's becoming faster and faster. Faster than the Earth's ability to replenish resources, or any other planet in this universe that we're talking about with Avengers. So Thanos believes, based on all of this information, that, hey, we're going to become overpopulated, and our planets and universes will die off. We'll see where it can no longer support life on the planet. And this idea isn't necessarily new. It's been around for a long time. Even in our modern day media, it's in movies and TV shows. People talk about it on the internet. Heck, even shows like The Office reference it. Dwight Schrute famously quoted on saying, as they're walking through this group of people, he sees everyone, he goes, there's too many people in the world. We need a new plague. But the question again, is Thanos right? Think about it right now. Pause this video. You've seen the exponential growth model. Now, we have a lot more information to go, but based on what you know so far, is he right? And have you figured out maybe who his ideas are based off of? As I've already hinted at, Thanos' ideas are nothing original. In fact, in the modern world, in reality today, not in the movie, Thanos would be known as more of a Neo-Malthusian. Now, he would be an extreme Neo-Malthusian since he wants to, kill off half the population. But he would be a Neo-Malthusian nonetheless. Now, Neo-Malthusians believe in Thomas Malthus' original idea. Now, you're going to have to understand who Thomas Malthus is so that we can go on with this theory and look at what's happening here. Thomas Malthus was an English economist. He actually came up with this idea during this Industrial Revolution. This is when we started to see Great Britain become kind of the first country to enter stage 2 of that demographic transition model. Now, Malthus believed that our population was going to continue to expand and grow, but eventually we would not be able to keep up with food production. We would hit a Malthusian catastrophe, where our population would become greater than our ability to produce food. And eventually then something would happen with famine and war and all of this stuff that would cause major issues with society. Malthus looked at what was happening. He noticed, hey, we're no longer as humans being killed off by these giant epidemics of plagues. We're not seeing these major wars. We're not seeing this control. And with our population growth rate just spiking now, because in stage 2 of that demographic transition model, that's where we have that high CBR and a decreasing CDR. Remember, that's medical, the Industrial Revolution, that all helped that. In case you need more help with that, watch the videos. But he projected that we would have this issue. Current day Neo-Malthusians, they're factoring more than just food. They essentially are saying, hey, Malthus is onto something, but he was too limited in his scope. He needs to focus not just on food production, but energy, water, resources in general. Today, the world is over 7.7 billion people, and we are still growing at a very fast rate. What they're saying is, hey, with this new spike in our population, we're not going to be able to have enough resources. The planet is starting to see major changes, and we're going to run into some big issues. And that's why Thanos would be a more Neo-Malthusian, because he's basing his ideas not just off food production, but just resources in general. Now, Thomas Malthus, he produced these thoughts in the essay of the Principles of Population. There was some interesting stuff from it. And actually, I'm going to read you a quote right now just to show you kind of his view on the future of humanity and the world. In it, Malthus says, "The power of population is so superior to the power of the earth to produce substance for man, man meaning men or women, just at the time they just wrote it as only men, that premature death must in some shape or other visit the human race." Thomas Malthus. You can tell he's not the most optimistic guy. He's saying that our population growth is superior to the Earth's ability to be able to produce food, substance. And what will happen then is we need to have something that will essentially cause early death. Otherwise, our population growth will exceed and we're going to have some big issues. Now, it's important to remember too, while Malthus came up with this theory, this is right when stage 2 of the demographic transition was happening for Britain. This is the first country to enter. A lot's changed since then. Now, in order for us to see if Thanos is actually the hero and if his idea would actually work, we have to be able to test it. Now, in the movie Avengers Infinity War, Thanos does test it. He goes to Gamora's planet and kills off half of the population. Now, Gamora is his daughter, but she's adopted. She was taken from that planet. They have a really complicated history, and she kind of spends the movie trying to stop him. She's actually the one in the clip that yelled at him saying, "You don't know that! You can't do that!" And he responds saying, "I'm the only one." Because in Thanos' mind, he is correct. And actually, that planet I just talked about, when he killed off half the population, they all became fed, they became happy, at least according to him, and are living good lives. So he's seen his logic work. But I was wondering, would it work for reality? Would it work for Earth? Now, it's hard to test this. Obviously, I can't go and kill off half the population, nor do I want to, so don't start spreading that rumor. But I wanted to know, would it work? And is there any event in our history that was maybe close to this? I was also curious of Malthus. How is Malthus' idea holding up? Is there some merit to it? And when looking back in time, one event stuck out, and that was the Black Plague. We've talked about the Black Death on this channel before. We referenced it when we went into the epidemiologic transition model. You know, the stages of death and disease and how are people dying and how is society evolving with medicine. It's a happy model, if I must say. But in it, we looked at stage 1, the stage where the Black Death happens. This is our famine and disease stage, where people are going to die frequently and essentially through anything. Heck, even animal attacks are going to kill you here. There's not a lot of medicine to protect you. But during the Black Death, it's estimated by some historians, one of them being a Norwegian historian who focuses on plagues, that over 50 million people died. Some estimates are as high as 60% of Europe's population. When looking at that, I was able to see, hey, that's actually pretty close, if not a little bit more than what Thanos projected would need to happen to be able to save humanity. Now, other estimates are a little bit less, but this is one event in history that we could study to see what happened after. A lot of people died during the Black Death, and in class we talked a lot about the death itself. We talked about what happened with society, the diffusion of the disease, the plague, as we looked at rats infesting the ships, infesting then the ports, and eventually making its way inland. But I was curious of what happened after. I mean, if all these people died, that's similar to what Thanos was saying. Would life actually be better off? Now, in my quest to figure out what happened to Europe after the Black Death, and was Thanos actually correct, and is he the hero, I came across a publication on JSTOR. The publication was an economic history review, The Black Death, written by A.R. Bertie, a historian specializing in medieval economics. Now, before I get into what I found, we have to understand supply and demand. Now, we'll go into this more in depth in our economic unit later on. But on the screen right now, you can see a basic supply and demand chart. Now, what this is showing is a couple of different things. One, we can see there is an inverse relationship with price and also quantity demanded. On the bottom, you can see our quantity. Going up, we can see our price. Now, as prices start to drop, demand goes up. When prices rise, demand goes down. Think about it this way. When you go to shop for something, you probably don't go to Amazon or Target or Walmart or wherever you're shopping, go, hey, look, everything's more expensive. Time to buy more. No, that would be ridiculous. You wouldn't do that. You wait for the sale. So as price starts to go down, people want to buy more. Now, the other part of this chart is the supply. And we can see here, as price goes up, supply goes up. Now, that's because producers, people who are making things, want to sell it for as much as possible. If I could sell a toy for 50 bucks, I will make sure that I do everything I can to sell it for 50. And I will produce as much as I possibly can to make sure I meet the demand. But if I could only sell it for $2, I might be willing to make some, but I'm not really going to go out of my way to make sure I'm producing everything. In fact, it might actually not be profitable for me to, and I might just stop producing. In the middle of this chart, we can see the equilibrium. This is where our X marks the spot. We have no surplus or shortage. What's happening here is both the demand is happy and supply. This is where the market wants to be. Now, this is important to understand because what I found, according to our wonderful historian who specializes in medieval economics, we started to see a big change in society. And that makes sense because half the population was killed. So think about that right now. What just happened to the demand? We still have products being sold, we still have food being produced, people still need to eat, but half of our population is gone. Our demand just fell, which means we have less people purchasing. So that equilibrium is actually going to have to shift downwards because we're going to have to drop the price. By dropping the price of goods, then we'll motivate people to buy more. And so we'll be able to increase our sales. So what we see actually after the Black Death is home prices went down. Another reason why? Because land went up. Now, there wasn't more land created, but there was more land available due to everyone who had died. So there's more things to purchase. And with more supply meant there's a little bit more competition. And so in order to attract buyers, they had to lower the price. And then also what happened is food prices went down. Less people were consuming things. We still had the same amount of arable land, yet now our physiological density has changed. Remember back to our densities. So we're not having to produce as much food. Price of food has fallen. Farmers now can also start specializing more. They can start doing other things. And that, again, would lower our agricultural density. So we've already talked about our demographic transition model in this video, economics, we've talked about the epidemiologic, and we now have talked about our densities. You can see this is connecting to everything. And my research kept going. One of the things I also found is wages actually went up. Because there was less workers, less people living, they needed to, companies, increase wages. And that was to make themselves more competitive so that they could get more of a workforce. Companies still demanded people to work, but the supply of workers had decreased. So the price went up. And so we could see actually what happened is life actually may have gotten better. If you survived the Black Plague, it actually got better for you. You were making more money. You started to see prices of land go down. Farmers could start specializing more because there wasn't as much food needed to be produced. And goods overall went down along with food, so it'd be more accessible. Now, I kept thinking and trying to figure out, okay, this couldn't be this simple. So I started to do a little bit more digging to try and see exactly what had happened. See if I could find some statistics or stats to back this up. Because overall, it's a little bit broad, and I still wasn't completely convinced that it was just basic supply and demand that ultimately made everyone better. And that Thanos was right, because right now it's looking like Thanos is actually correct. The Black Death, if you survived it, it looks like life was better off. So far, Thanos may be winning. Now, while researching this further, trying to really see if Thanos was correct and if this was truly just supply and demand, I came across the Economic History Association, an article written by David Rout from the University of Richmond. In it, Rout talks about how actually the power was shifted to the peasants. Due to the changes in population, peasants gained more, and they needed to get wage increases to motivate them to work in all these other jobs. In his article, he states, workers started to see an increase in wages due to the decrease of workforce and the demand for work. In some cases, wages rose from 12% to 28%, from the 1340s to the 1350s, and 20% to 40% from the 1340s to the 1360s. So right there, I just found more evidence that actually showed if you survived the plague, life was better off. I mean, Thanos is actually looking like he's onto something right now. While I may have convinced some of you that Malthus, Thanos, they were actually onto something, I'm sure there's plenty of you skeptics still out there. So let's actually address some of that. I realize, hey, the Black Death, that was a long time ago. Do you have anything more current, Mr. Sinn? So let's look at today. Let's look at current day world, where we live right now. Right now, the UN just released in 2018 a climate change report. It came from the Intergovernmental Climate Change Panel. And they actually released some shocking evidence and stats that are scaring a lot of world leaders. They're showing a world where the temperature is going to be rising by 2 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. Now, what that means is we are projected to have rising sea levels, more wildfires, droughts, famine, more food shortages, extreme weather patterns. The coral reefs are projected to be killed off, along with a bunch of species. Now, we can see changes starting to happen. Even in 2018 alone, look at how many wildfires we have had, or hurricanes, or other events that have been catastrophic. Now, regardless of where your thoughts are on climate change and global warming, that is actually leading towards the fact of Malthusian's catastrophe that Malthus, projected. Thanos also talks about it. Our population has been growing. Some demographers from the UN, demographers being people who study population, project that our population growth should cap out somewhere around 12 to possibly 14 billion people. Right now, we're around a world population of about 7.7 billion. You can see we're constantly growing. Now, other demographers project that we will go even further, and some project that we'll cap out even sooner. And the carrying capacity of the world is also debated. How many people can our planet support? What is clear, though, and what is evident is that the more people we have, the more we are consuming, and the more of a footprint we're leaving on our planet. And the more resources we use and the more pollution that we cause, the environment is responding. Remember the 5 themes of geography. Human-environment interaction. Whenever we do stuff with the environment has a reaction back. And then we react to the environment. It's this back and forth. So it's something to think about. We can also look at parts of the world today and see issues starting to arise that deal with resources and the scarcity of them, which is causing more conflict. One of the areas that we can look at in the world is Kashmir, the disputed territory between India and Pakistan. Both are fighting over control of it. Both say that they own it and that it's theirs to have. And one of the reasons why that border is so intense, it's actually one of the world's most dangerous borders, is one, because of terrorism and all of the conflict there, but two, both sides believe that if the other side gets control of that area, which actually happens to be a major water source for both countries, that they'll cut off the other side. Parts of the world are actually starting to run out of water. There we are seeing an intense fight and control issues over that land, Kashmir being the land, because of water. And if you remove water from a population, then you start to see anarchy and a collapse of the government because people need water and food to survive. That right there is actually hinting again towards another Malthusian catastrophe. Thanos would look at that and say, hey, if there was half of the people, they wouldn't have to be fighting over this scarce resource, being clean water in this example. We could also look at Africa and other parts of the world that are struggling with droughts and famine, as we also see too food shortages. Even some parts of the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where we are seeing an increase in births due to diminishing arable land. Now, the reason why it's starting to happen is as countries have been in stage 2, remember we have high birth rate, that high CBR, and a decreasing death rate due to medical advancements and the diffusion there, we see families continue to rely on their children to be able to support them at home. So farmers are having more kids to be able to grow and help them with gathering food to be able to support the family. As the land then continues to be used more and more, we start to see desertification happen, where the land is starting to die off. The deserts are expanding on our planet. And then because of that, we see a kind of cause and effect possibly, where farmers then have to struggle to get more and more food, and so they start having more kids to be able to support it, which requires more food to be grown or more resources to be gathered to be able to support the family, which continues then to kill off the arable land and spreads the desert further. So we can see current day, we're having some of these issues already. The question is though, is it going to continue to scale up? Or are we going to continue to see it more on more localized levels in certain parts of the world or certain regions? That is the million-dollar question that no one really is 100% certain on. But all of this points to the idea that Thanos and Malthus might actually be correct. These Neo-Malthusians, remember Neo-Malthusians, current day believers of Malthus, but they've adapted and changed it a little bit. They incorporate water, resources. They're incorporating energy and food production into Malthus's original idea. They might be right. I mean, I've just gone over a ton of evidence to show that, hey, they could be onto something, and we actually might be heading down a path that looks pretty bleak and scary. By now, maybe some of you are 100% on board with Malthus and Thanos and Neo-Malthusians, and you are convinced. But I still haven't told the other story, the other side to this, the people that fight back and go against it. Now, this video ended up being a lot longer than I originally intended. I continue to do more and more research, and I still have plenty to go. So I'm actually going to break this up into multiple parts. The only reason why I am is to make sure that you can understand everything, and I don't have to rush through all the content. I mean, alone in this video, we've covered a ton of concepts. So make sure you check out my next video. It's going to be talking about why Malthus and Thanos are actually wrong, and the whole other side to this story. And maybe this exponential population growth and our scarcity of resources isn't actually true. Maybe reality is a little bit different. So make sure to check that out next time. But before you leave, make sure you subscribe and support the channel. That way too, when I post the next video, you'll get notified. If you hit the bell, it'll tell you right away. That way you can see what's going on and continue this story to figure out, is Thanos the bad guy? Is he actually the hero? Is Malthus right? All of these things, think about in the time being. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Is Thanos good? Is he bad? Obviously, yes, killing people isn't good, and we're not promoting that at all on the channel, but something to think about. I'm Mr. Sinn. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and until next time, I'll see you online.